What's good, everyone? Welcome back to episode 3. I feel good saying that. Episode 3 with Jedi to Jedi. Today, we're going to be reviewing none other than Star Wars Episode 3 itself, The Revenge of the Sith. I'm not going to go into my ranking or rating of it, but like one of the best Star Wars films to ever exist. That's all I'm going to say. Anyways, first of all, how are you today, sir?
Yeah, good. Loving the heat. Got the fan on. So
I think that's how every British person kind of is at this moment in time.
Yeah, it's like that.
Nice for the first couple of days. Now I'm tired of it.
Yeah, melting away slowly, I'm guessing.
I think that's the
and
British.
That's unfortunately, I've got some Scandinavian blood probably in my veins somewhere. Like, I'd rather be out in the snow, to be honest.
I think for me personally, it's warm, but there's just no humidity where I currently am. So it's like, it's nice and hot outside, but I just can't breathe. So it's just, it's not the best. But so today we're here to review obviously episode 3, The Revenge of the Sith, which is a fantastic film. So I just want to ask you, when was the first time you've seen it? And what was your first thoughts, initial reactions? Like, how did you
feel? Yeah, so cool. Day one it got released. Yeah.
Oh wow! You were.
I make sure.
Remember the day?
On the day premiere. Yeah, there.
No, do you remember the Pacific day?
Oh, the day. No, I haven't got that much of a good memory. I'm getting too old for that. It was many years ago. No, so yeah, I remember being blown away, and then having to come back and then you go watch it because everything happens in this movie.
Yeah.
And of course you're leading up to the one scene everybody wants to see with the Kenobi Anakin fight, Vader fight, I suppose, that when he turns. But there's so much else in this movie. You have to kind of watch it over and over again because it's like, like you can go with the Battle of the Coruscant. It's literally straight away, and then there's so much to see in that you could go skip over it. So
I get your point. There's so much going on that like you have to watch it a couple of times to really take everything in, because there's the war, there's the birth of obviously the children, as in Luke and Leia, and that the whole developing arc. There's a whole arc that then develops with Anakin and Obi-Wan. Shout out to everybody who watched Obi-Wan series as well, and go and check out Jedi to Jedi's reviews, which have been absolutely killer. But there's so many different levels in this film, and as you said, everybody's waiting for the scene of when his downfall and he becomes Vader, but there's so much that leads up to it, and at any moment it's one of those films that if you turn it on at any moment, there's something happening constantly. Not to the point of like how, not to say anything about it like Clone Wars, but not to the point like how Clone Wars was constantly a war. This had a war, a love aspect, a space battle, like duels, Sith, the Metachlorians. There were so many things that came into play into this. Samuel L. Jackson. So
I think like there's bits of this though, and there's like I remember when I first saw it, it's probably because I like Dooku. I really didn't like how in the first 20 minutes he's gone, isn't it? Because I
did find that was very lackluster compared to the previous film. Like, let's be completely honest. For me, and I said this in the last review, and go check out our previous review over on Jedi to Jedi's channel. Dooku made that film. Dooku was the boss of that film. Like, look at what the whole fight with Yoda. What he did. What he did to Anakin and what he did to Obi-Wan. He kind of just like slapped them to the side, just like, this is how you duel. And then in this film, it probably was about 15 to 20 minutes in. The lightsaber battle wasn't too much of a battle. He did kind of save himself with the super droids as well, when he was just like, if you take the battle for a second, I'm gonna relax. And
because I think this is probably, I would have to say, the only Star Wars movie that literally throws you in the deep end. Yeah, you have other ones that have a space, like the space battle or something happening, but this literally goes
straight away.
You're already into a storyline, because you're not building up. They've got to go on the ship, and there's already been the Chancellor's been taken hostage. They're going like that. There's a battle in space over Coruscant. You're like, what is going on? You have to like get engaged straight away and find out what is going on.
Maybe why that happened is because obviously 5 films prior to that, this whole big story that was leading up to, and as you said, everybody's waiting for this pinnacle moment to happen in this episode. So it was kind of like we haven't got time for any filler. It's literally
No.
the chancellor's been taken. You need to go and get them. Oh, look, here's Grievous. The first interaction with Grievous and Anakin, which I always still find hilarious to this day. You know, I thought you would have been told.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, but I think even to the, like, you could see it, what George was thinking, like, make it a little bit humorous, because even with the buzz droids, you have that little bit of humor with them, with R2, you know, with the shoot him in the like the mid eye or whatever they call it, and then that, so it's a bit more humorous, like
Star Wars has always had that undertone of humor, where regardless of it being dark, because even if you look back at the original, you know, series, it was dark, yes, in certain parts, but that was to develop story and character and whatever else. But they always had a lightheartedness of to bring, I guess, maybe the family orientatedness back into play, if you get what I mean. Because who do you think? So I know Jar Jar, as we say, was kind of added in. Not really. Well, he was added in for his reasons, but more so like for the childlike aspects of the movies and whatnot. What do you? Which character do you feel played that role in Revenge of the Sith? Because I feel like it was more of a serious movie. There was
you have the odd comment in this movie, but there is
more witty remarks, wasn't there?
Yeah, there's more. Yeah, you know, the hello there. It's like a witty, like, you know, play. It didn't have to be done, but it's all like they'll play. In this, the humor comes, I suppose, directly from R2's interaction, you know, even when they're going up on the escalator and they're like, no, we need to go up or down. They're like, we're going the wrong way. And then they does the oil spill, doesn't he? To like do the battle droids.
At that specific moment, I'm glad you said that, because when you said about the lifts going up and down, you as well as me have also seen the deleted scenes. There's the scene with Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi. And I'm not going to do it because I can't imitate a droid. And he's like, does something mean up? And he's like, no, that means down. Guys, go and watch the deleted scenes and you'll understand what I'm talking about. Otherwise, it sounds like I'm rambling. But you know what I'm on about? If they kept that in, I think that would have kind of derailed the whole seriousness of what was going on at that current moment in time. But yeah, there were light-hearted aspects of, you know, laughter within, especially General Grievous and Kenobi. Anakin, not really so much, because I think he was very focused throughout this movie. You know, it's only at the start you get to see, I think, a bit more of the lightheartedness of Anakin Skywalker's personality, and then due to how the film kind of just delves deeper and deeper and deeper into the plot, that kind of slowly slips away, and then obviously we start to get these layers of what's going on within the galaxy, what's going on within, you know, the Senate. So
I think it's supposed to play that once he decapitates Dooku. I think that's supposed to be his point in the movie. Before that, yeah, you do get humorous remarks. After that,
yeah, because then you see the change in him as soon as he does decapitate him. Before he even speaks to Palpatine, if you like, well, even pause or just look at that scene, you can see the distress on his face of what he's done, and he instantly knows it's wrong. And then what, you know, the lines of what he then says afterwards is, you know, even to the Chancellor, and he's like, oh, you know, and the Chancellor tries to make out that, you know, it was only right because he wanted revenge. He took his arms, and Anakin obviously explains that's not the Jedi way. So he still has that level of empathy, but yeah, it slipped into at that point the movie starts to slip into a darker tone of like, this is what he's slightly becoming and what he's going to be molded into, whatever else.
Well, yeah, and I think you get that from them introducing Grievous. This is what, you know, you're seeing, what you're going to become. Yeah. So you kind of get that straight, kind of, I suppose, in the forefront straight away, because it's goes things. But then you get, of course, he's done all that, and then of course he goes back to the Senate, I suppose, and then we'll find out, I'm pregnant. And it's like, whoa, it's like, you know, we're what 30 minutes in the movie, you know, and it's just like that. But one thing, before we just go like that, the one thing I always find out funny, and no one's mentioned, you know, when we're flying half a ship, you know, and they land, and they take out the air traffic control bit. And I'm like, that would have killed thousands of people. Probably like that. I'm like, nobody ever mentions that. I'm like, you just literally took out an air traffic control center. It's like,
and the other thing as well that I didn't understand with them having half a ship, what about the oxygen?
Yeah, it would have been, you would think the main
Like,
facility
you
for
can't
that
really
ship
have
would be
concealed
all
oxygen
about.
when you have half a ship. It's like,
No.
conceal the oxygen. It's like, well, half the ship's gone and half all the electronics to conceal the ship were in that part of the ship, and that part of the ship is somewhere in Naboo. So, you know, I don't know what to do right now. But I think more than anything, like that was the last of the real lightheartedness of that movie. Was like, I've got half a ship. But after that, it was kind of like, okay, yeah, now we're going to show you how dark this is going to delve into with, like, you know, Grievous and actually, what did you think of the animals or space creatures essentially in Revenge of the Sith? Do you think they were interesting compared to Attack of the Clones? Because we got to see Geonosians and different species, and I feel like we didn't really see too many different types of species or new different types of species in Revenge of the Sith.
No, the main one, like
See the Grand Inquisitor's race.
The comment section will have to put this is the animal that Obi-Wan rides at the end. But apart from that, everybody's a bit things. You do get probably one of the better scenes is the tragedy of Darth Plagueis, and you know, like in that arena, whatever, you know, that bit and the lead up to that with all the people waiting for the show. But apart from that, yeah, you have some the Order 66, and then the worlds, you see the different worlds, and that looks really cool. But apart from that, yeah, there's more, I suppose, diverse creatures, I suppose, in Attack of the Clones than this movie. But I think that's supposed to be because you're supposed to be like, you know, for the forefront of how Palpatine is going to manipulate everything, how this is all going to happen, you know, with the Senate, because it is very quickly done in you know, sense of like everybody, you know, this is how liberty dies by applaud, rounds of
this is how liberty dies with astounding applause.
That's it, rows of applaudments.
I think one of my favorite additions that was part of Revenge of the Sith would have been the Magna Guards. Just I know they weren't creatures, but just something that was new added into Star Wars, you know, prior to everything else, because we hadn't seen these. Well, unless you had seen the Clone Wars micro series, they were actually involved in parts of that. And, but yeah, the Magna Guards, you know, I thought they were pretty cool. And I didn't like how I enjoyed Clone Wars, and I know you did, so I know that you obviously got to learn more about General Grievous, the fact that he was from the Kalish race, so on and so forth. How, I don't know if you've looked at expanded media, Count Dooku tried to make him a Force user by putting blood of Force users inside of him, but he just wasn't able to take it. That's by the by anyway. But I liked how they looked more like a tribe than like droids. They had a sense of individuality. They looked different from the T1 regular battle droids that, you know, we were always used to seeing. Like character wise, Palpatine had a very quick change. That's the only thing. That'll be my only gripes within that film. And I know, like, we got to see the lead up to this, but it felt like, you know, as soon as he said, "Did I ever tell you the tale of us?" Yeah, the second that happened, he was like, "I am literally a Sith Lord. I'm just waiting for you to go Sith." And then I go, "Yes. You only realize now I've just been doing this for 15 years, like, you know." But I feel like his turn was a bit too quick. We should have had a bit more adapted explanation.
I didn't mind it. I kind of had that as, you know, that was his true self. He's been playing this role in the Senate, hasn't he? And you know, when he was on Naboo, and he's had to do this for years to manipulate it, but he's real. You know, when he comes out, he's like,
but that's what I mean. I felt like it was a bit too like, okay, maybe his is, as you say, it's his true self and it's his instinct, but it was too. It was like a light switch. He was like, "I'm a Jedi. I'm a Jedi." Yeah. Like, can you stop? And Anakin was just like, "Take me." Like, "Can you save everybody I love?" Yes, that's fine. Yeah. But I think more than anything, the film, you know, initially his life starts to lead into darker tones. Then obviously we get to, you know, understand what's been going on in the war. What do you think about the portrayal of the Jedi Council at the moment in time? Do you feel they should have acted differently in any sort of way? Because they were quite dogmatic. I know, obviously they did.
Yeah, I think there was a missed opportunity with that, because all it is, I think it's the previous, was it, that they are losing their sense of the Force, isn't it? And it's just really drifted over. That's why they, you know, they can't find this dark lord that they think is out there somewhere. And it's just okay, but there's not that element to show that they're being played with. Yeah, we know they are, and they should be, you know, they're being made all generals and they're like peacekeepers. And but there should have been a manipulation.
A big contradiction within
it should have been. And I would have liked it to actually have a betrayal in the Jedi Council itself, and actually, you know, Yoda's the Grand Master, but actually have somebody else and Yoda below him, and that person is being manipulated as well by like the dark side, but we don't find out. It would be, you know, until the most. That's why they are allowing.
You know, a storyline that I really wish they should have done, and I think it was a massively missed opportunity. They could have done it in episode 2, or they could have done it in episode 3. But no, they couldn't have, because Dooku died in 20 minutes. But they could have done it in episode 2. Was the librarian and Dooku? I wanted to see like either flashbacks or something of a story. Well, they could actually, Star Wars, if you're listening to this, you're probably not, but if you are listening to this, go and make this as a film in the future with CGI or whatever else, and like show how Dooku's character maybe could have led her astray because of her, like, you know, her feelings towards him. And he essentially wasn't a Sith at that moment in time, but he was another Force user like Qui-Gon, who was, as they said, open and, you know, was.
Yeah, how much people like General Grievous, but I think I don't think this character is even needed. I'm gonna be like, because you actually think if you just replace him with Dooku and then that thing go Dooku, let's go through.
And the thing that felt weak for me always about Grievous was Darth Maul, as much as, you know, all right, and I have a special love and affinity towards him because I love, you know, bloody Phantom Menace, but regardless, take that to one side. As a character, he says like 7 words, but he was so impactful that people love him generationally throughout. And, you know, that's fair enough. Episode 2, you know, Count Dooku, you know, Christopher Lee, his character, like, and people that he portrays, you know, it was an amazing portrayal, and you got to find out more about him. Grievous didn't really have, if you watch Clone Wars, you understand more, but Grievous, you don't really understand anything too much about him in the film, just that he's the new figure that's been replaced as that person.
I get this.
And he was a droid, and because he was a droid, it gave him no human emotion. I know he was cyborg to an extent, but how he acted, there was no driving force behind what he did. It's just, we didn't even know what he wanted. He never said he wanted power. He didn't want to be a Sith, because he clearly wasn't a Sith. He, to me, in that film, was kind of like looking at a bounty hunter. When I looked at him, I was like, okay, you have these collections of lightsabers. You know, you're very decorative about who you kill, and you want to, you know, strike fear into people. But he never felt like a threat, because when I've watched 5 films prior of countless Jedis destroying droids like this, and you know what I mean? So he never, as you said, you know, he didn't feel like he was necessary. And most of the point, I agree with you on that point, because it didn't feel like there was any impact of him living or dying. Because it's like, if you die, cool, but I'm worried about Anakin.
Yeah, and it's, I know from like normies who watch this and haven't watched the Clone Wars, and people do. Some people just watch the Star Wars movies, of course. And who is he? Why are we getting this new introduced character? And it was because you don't have anything. It's like, well, hold it. Yeah, where's his backstory with it? And his backstory in like what we get in Legends now and lore and all that, it's quite like horrific and terrifying, but really interesting.
I'll say, when Revenge of the Sith came out, and produced the time of when it came out, Clone Wars came out years later. I watched this film, and we'll get into that in a minute, but I watched this film very young. I did not like him as a character. When I watched Clone Wars, I loved General Grievous as a character. I went and bought graphic novels to find out about the Kaleesh race, and to find out about as I said earlier on, the ritual that he went through to obviously have, you know, the Force-sensitive blood put inside of him to see if he could essentially gain Force abilities, and how I don't want to ruin this storyline for anyone, but there's a very interesting storyline with how he actually becomes General Grievous. So if you guys want to look into that, and it's a fascinating story. Like, I know we're going off a bit of episode 3, but I think that part of it, there's not even
oh, where did he come from? What, you know, there's not even that stuff. He just appears,
Yeah,
you know, and that's it. And then, oh, apparently he's now the next target. And if Kenobi goes and hunts him down, that ends the war. And you're like, hold it, how's this guy so important? Well, you know, why has he got control over?
What we know at that moment in time is he's the new leader of the droid army. So a droid is the leader of the droid army, which
and you think, well, he could be replaced. Yeah, and you got all these, you know.
The other thing I always thought as well, you know, when the droid army got switched off, why someone just turned General Reed? It's like, I've had enough of you murdering Jedi. He's like, oh, just gives up and shuts up. But yeah, and well, to bring it back to obviously what we were talking about, compared to the other two previous villains of Darth Maul, you know, from the very start, we're told about the Sith have now come back into the galaxy. He's the first Sith that they've seen, that we see on the screen. He has a badass double-wended lightsaber and just causes complete havoc. The second one, he's Count Dooku, is constantly talked about.
Yeah,
constantly talked about. So it's not like when he turns up, you're like, who is this character? It's just like, we know exactly who you are. We know that you were from the Jedi Order. We know that you left. We know everything that's been going on. Yeah. Grievous turns up and it's just like, I am a droid and I'm really annoyed.
Yeah, because it would have been interesting, just going on that point, like we've got now introduction of the Sith are back in episode 1. Yeah, Phantom Menace. But after that, you would think somebody in the Jedi Council goes, look, we destroyed the Sith 1,000 years ago. We need to send somebody to their home planet or something like that. Why is this? What's going on? Yeah, you know, there's no investigation of anything. It's like
I think that plays on the dogmatic part of the Jedi. Yeah, we've dealt with it. It's done now. It's like, that's not how things work.
Yeah, but you would have somebody like, oh, we need to go back into the Jedi archives and, you know, did we miss something? You know, open up that. You know, there must have been, but there wasn't. It was just really
okay. To play devil's advocate. To play devil's advocate, do you feel like because the Jedi Temple is built on a Sith temple and you know the Force, Palpatine had manipulated the Force and whatever else around the Jedi so that they couldn't essentially see what was going on? Do you feel like his ability in the Force was so strong that's why none of them decided to go, oh yeah, Sith appeared in, I know they wouldn't say episode 1, Sith appeared in this year. Okay, do you reckon that because obviously as well, this is the other thing as well, playing off your point. What's the end lines of the Phantom Menace? Which was destroyed, the Sith or the apprentice, the Master or the Apprentice? And Samuel L. Jackson said that. So would no one of them thought, should we go? Or do you think because Palpatine was so vastly powerful and manipulating the Force, he was able to just wipe that from, you know?
I think they were so like
dogmatic as they play.
Yeah, that's how they kind of play with it on the say, like, oh, we've lost our ability with the Force. We need to tell, you know, the Senate. But yeah, maybe he's got a cloud, you know, say like, you know, the dark side, you know, with the clouds and all that, you know, shadows, the light. But yeah, it's like they just kind of, did you say, like, just fall back and go, okay, we're just, you know, we're reactive here. Next thing that happens, then, you know, it's going to reveal itself, and they just don't do it. But, you know, it's hard, like with the whole I always found it weird that the Jedi Temple was on Coruscant as well.
Yeah,
always found that weird because it doesn't feel Jedi. No. If that makes, because you were supposed to be in harmony. Like if you go through, I suppose, like Buddhism temples,
you wouldn't be a city around you. With
no, you would have it like, you know, the living, like more Jedi. Of the living force. Yeah. Or something like that. So I would have thought this would, like, it should have, there should have been like a, I suppose, like, yeah, like a Jedi home world, like, you know, the temple where it's all green,
like fields out of the way, temples, caves, you know, an area that's very force bound. Whereas, all right, I'm not that deep into Star Wars to know that specifically, but like Coruscant, there's a lot of evil, treacherous villainy going about. It's like you have to like be one with the living force. You can't just have like, yeah, we've got like 17 floors of mass murderers and all this, that, and the other. But yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, well, the underworld there, it's like
temple as well.
Yeah, it's known like the layers that we see is like the top layers, but like there's the dark underworld, and of course George Lucas wanted to make a whole bounty hunter dark, you know, like
guys, look into Star Wars 1313 if you want to know more about that council game that was going to explore.
I saw that. Yeah, I saw
all the dark areas of Coruscant, and it looked fantastic. But yeah, and on that point, do you not think that they were kind of doomed by deciding to build a Jedi temple on top of a Sith temple?
Yeah, it's well,
Because
I can't, you have to get confused now. What's the law and what's legends now? Is yeah, it's supposed to be there to hold back the evil, I suppose, isn't it? That's why they did it. But of course, it was two ways. Well, it's manipulating you as much as you're trying to, stop the manipulation, I suppose. And it's just the two-way road. That's why I would have thought it would have been good is to have this separate temple where it's more of enlightenment, but when they get there you can see the slight subtle changes in the Jedi, and I think that would have been great for Anakin's story to see that tug like the things when because he's spending so much time on Coruscant because of Padme. It would have made more sense. He's everybody else takes their R&R, I suppose, to have enlightenment, but he's there because of her, so he's not having that getaway, from the evil, from the draw. Yeah, because
he's constantly there because the one he loves.
Yeah, so yeah, I think that would have been a good, way to show he's doing it to himself as well. He's pulling it to the dark side, not just, but yeah, like he has the dream, and then it's kind of like I will save you, and then that leads into when the tragedy of Darth Plagueis speech, and you're like, oh, and that's how they're gonna do it, and you're like, oh, okay. Like this scene, I'm just gonna go on that scene. When I first watched it, I was like, oh, that is pathetic. I really didn't like that scene when I first watched it. But now I go back and I'm like, that's probably one of the best scenes in Star Wars. But when I first watched it, I didn't like it. Like, very controversial for some people. But I was like, well, what's this about now?
Okay, so I'm going to get into this now. So the very first time I watched this film, I was 12 years old, and it was my birthday. And it wasn't that my birthday was on the day it came out. It came out, I think, 3 days prior to this. I went to go see it in the cinema. Watching that in the cinema, for me, that was like one of the most pinnacle moments ever, because obviously I knew what was going to happen next, and seeing it on the big screen, that was fantastic more than anything. But I would recommend anybody at some point in your life, I can't speak for newer movies because I don't know how they're going to turn out, but watch a Star Wars film on the big screen. There's a whole different feeling compared to watching it in your house. Obviously, it's great to watch it at home, but there was a lot of scenes in Star Wars that I ended up going back and appreciating at a later date. And that one I appreciated more so when I read the Darth Plagueis novelization. I appreciated that scene more so after I had read that book about 2 or 3 years after Revenge of the Sith, because I then got more so into reading like expanded novels and comics and whatnot. I think more than anything with the film, like from then, the scene, it was a good scene, but obviously there's more of an expansion upon it if you read the book, the Revenge of the Sith novel. There's like more expanded text of some of the undertones of what he was leading into. But do you feel that it was necessary for Anakin to kill the young ones in order to turn to the dark side?
Yeah, I think so. I think he's playing on it. He's got to do it, hasn't he? It would have been good to like him doing it with the clone troopers. I think that would have made it more impact. Like, I can't be shown to be weak here, where he just literally just goes in and Master, what do we do?
Spoilers now. How do you feel about watching Revenge of the Sith knowing about Reva? Spoilers, people.
Oh yeah, it's it's just like that. You're just like, oh, you're trying to. They do it. Going forward, they just do it to like undermine.
Yeah.
And I just don't get this undermining thing. But less of that. Because once you start going into it, you're like, oh no, that shouldn't have happened.
Doesn't take away from
still right. Yeah.
I'll be honest. After I finished watching Kenobi, I went and watched episode 1, 2, and 3. Not because of Kenobi, I just watched the films anyway. But obviously, after then freshly watching all of Kenobi, getting to episode 3, when I seen that happen, do you know what I literally did? I just removed her from my mind. I was just like, you will not take away from this story. Thank you, Reva. And I continued watching the film, and then I thought, I understand how you use that, how to adapt on making Kenobi, but
well, it's just silly.
I see him as two separate entities.
Yeah, because like on this, it doesn't still to make sense because the clones are still at the Jedi temple when we get Obi-Wan and Yoda come back to the temple. So even if that was she did survive, you're saying none of the clones went, I'm just going to do a double kill on everyone and make sure there's nobody alive.
And how efficient they also were as well. They were like programmed and trained to do this. This is what I didn't understand with the amount of Jedi that just magically survive. Like, yes, execute the order 66, except for them 66 over there. You're just like, well, why are they all still alive?
Well, you could have gone more into that on that show. Is, you know, there are these Jedi, but they're literally on backwater planets, you know, like even further in past Tatooine, you know. The outer, but these are like, you know, they fled to the outer room. That's something we've never expanded on. But yeah, it's kind of like, no, we're going to be pigeonholed and we're going to be narrow-minded about it. But it's still good. But they're just missed opportunities. Like, but there's some great ones because, like going Kashyyyk and seeing the Wookiees, you know, and all that is absolutely brilliant because that's what we were supposed to get in Return of the Jedi
as well, of how they lived up in the trees and everything.
Yeah, and cool. It was just saying, we get to see the Wookiees at full battle thing because, like, I have to, I love Return of the Jedi, but to have the Wookiees there and just going, like, the producers going, we'll give you money to make the suits, and then literally would have had that like, you know, they're coming out of, you know, we know they got taken as slaves. But they're literally this band of, like, you know, would have been cool. But we get that. And I liked it, but it's too CGI'd. You can tell that scene when they come up. There's like a couple of them in their actual suits. And
I don't want to say anything bad, but the whole fight scene on Kashyyyk, now going back and looking at it, as much as I love Star Wars, but now going back and looking at I forget the name of the specific droids that they had. They kind of went like that, and they had rotaries on the bottom of them as a tank would. And the scene when they're initially going onto the beach, you watch the Wookiees running at them, like, one, from a military standpoint, like, do not run at a big vehicle, that's not going to work out. And two, looking at the CGI, there was points where I was like, oh, this don't look the best. But you know, when you're that invested into a franchise because of, one, the characters, two, the story, three, the lore, and you just like the universe of what's going on, you can kind of just like push that to one side.
Well, you would think,
like, you still enjoy these movies.
Yeah, like military strategy. You're in a, well, one, why isn't the Confederacy nuking them from space? But on the other account, you got to think that if they're on ground, the Wookiees are good in the trees. Why wouldn't they just come up to the trees? You're a droid. Literally, they go to meet them at a kind of neutral ground of, like, at the edge of that, like, lake or sea or whatever.
The edge of the
like,
they're just
why
like,
would you do that?
We'll just stand here and wait for you. And it's just like, you know, you've probably got targeting systems where you could just like zoom in and be like, look, there's the infrared. They're all hiding by there.
So it's just a bit like, it was just jumped over. But the whole scene, I was like, yes, because in the trailer you get to see that and you're like, oh, we're gonna get a Wookiee battle, and then it's just over. You don't really get to see much. Like, you get a couple of them doing their Tarzan impressions, but otherwise from that, like,
well, we got to see that one Wookiee take out them two droids as soon as Execute Order 66 was announced. And but Yoda knew anyway, because you just watched him turn his head for a second. He's like, I'm going to let you do the work. I will. And he's like, you know, and it kind of just played out how it did. But what do you think of the fight between Palpatine and Yoda? Do you believe it lived up to your expectations?
No, there's a lot of flaw.
How did you?
Go on.
How do you think it should be played? Was more force or more?
Okay, this whole thing would make sense, and it would make, if Yoda didn't have a walking stick, and that's why he has a walking stick, and when we see him in Empire, is because the reason he had to give up the fight is because he got impaled through the leg and he couldn't walk. Because if you think this is a very strict, and well, he's been in it like in the Jedi Order longer than anybody else, so he's doctrinating into that religion, if you class it as a religion. It's got to be so extreme, and so, you know, this, I can't let this die. He would fight, you know, you would fight till your last breath. And I just feel when he did fall, he just kind of, I'm just going to go in exile, and you're like, why wouldn't you go? Literally, you're going to go.
I didn't get that, because And especially when it was like, okay, everything's fallen, the prophecy's screwed, like the galaxy's in tatters. This guy is, as they said, he's taken over the Senate, he's taken over everything, so he's the majority ruler and control everything. And you lose you don't even lose, you're losing in a battle, and in order to win the battle, like 50 years later, you're like, okay, I'm now going to go into exile, because as long as I don't die, the Jedi don't die. But it's like, you're not essentially a Jedi if you're not actually out in the universe doing Jedi. Like, okay, he does his Jedi stuff on Dagobah, but like the Jedi at that point are supposed to be the peacekeepers, and you're not keeping the peace if you're like, I'm just going to exile myself, and this way the ways of the Jedi will live on, only if they like somehow hear my force call and come to me all the way across the, so I agree on that point.
It just felt like it should have been a bit more, something terrible happened, or even if it got overrun, like 1,000 stormtroopers, clone troopers came rushing in, and then he kind of had to fight off, and then Palpatine escape somehow. That would have made sense.
It was forced to retreat. Because it felt like he just gave up halfway and was just like, I'm just gonna crawl in there and get out of there.
But it's just, there's a bit, oh come on, like the fight was okay. I didn't like some of the too much jumping, I thought, like in the Senate ones with the spinning. They did it to get show that whole area being
destroyed,
being destroyed, and that's where he came up from. But I think it was just a bit, it was a bit meh,
I know,
it just didn't, oh come on. But then you just like, because I think he had the upper hand. I think he could have taken him out, but he's like, I've lost my cloak, I'm done. That's the Jedi end.
You hit me leg, I lost my cloak, I'm out of it.
That's it.
Like, really? You're like, in the last film, did you know what we seen you do in the last film?
Like, especially like Jedis can
like defeat that you were able to like nearly get over Dooku, and now you're just like, I've had enough, mate. All right, I'm 900 years old. I'm sick and tired of fighting these wars. I'm going to Dagobah. All right. It just got got to a point where it was too much for him. But when we come back in part 2, guys, we're gonna get into the most pinnacle fight of that whole episode.
We've got 2 fights. We've got Obi-Wan, Grievous, and Obi-Wan.
That's true. You are very true.
Yes.
We'll get back into that in part 2. So catch you all back in part 2.